For the record, it was 13 when I started my journalism career. In Shenandoah, Iowa, the Evening Sentinel, I had two older brothers who were the sports writers when they were juniors and seniors in high school. And that small town daily paper, 5-day daily, like a lot of small town papers back then, did not have much money for staff, so they'd hire high school kids to do the sports. And phone rang at our house on Sunday afternoon after church, and I heard my mother say, "Well, hi, Mr. Tyndall, how are you?" Found out it was Bob Tyndall, the managing editor of the Evening Sentinel. And she said, "Well," and she turned around and she looked at me sitting on the couch, and she said, "He's only 13 years old, he doesn't even know how to type." And Tyndall said, "Just put him in a school summer typing course, push him through the door, and we'll do the rest." So there I went, 13 years old, thinking a face full of pimples, thrown into an office of adults, and I thought writing was about the most uncool thing you could possibly do. But I stuck with it for a couple of years, and two things. When I found out I was getting paid, that was not even part of the discussion at first. It was Ann Offenburger telling me I was going to go become a sports writer. But getting paid was something else, and then getting my name in the paper every time I wrote a story became a big deal. And then the other thing that's carried me my whole career was that I found out that as long as I carried that notebook in my pocket, when I'd walk up to those cool high school kids or coaches and start asking them questions, and this has been true with governors and senators and presidents. When I walk up there and start asking questions with that notebook out, they pretend like they want to talk to me. It's the damnedest thing. So I'm really glad to be here with you, and most important thing I want to tell you, and I'll repeat this during the thing, is thank you. I believe in this mission. I'm a person that cares a whole lot about Iowa, as Michelle indicated, and I pretty well know the territory, having traveled all over this state for so long. And I think back, I checked back, and the Food Bank of Iowa was organized, I think, in 1982. And when I think about what Iowa would have been, I don't know what Iowa could have been like had we not had the Food Bank of Iowa. I mean, there would have been something else grow up to meet the need. Because throughout my life, the need's been growing and growing and growing. Luckily, it seems, so does the involvement and the commitment from people like you all over the state who will step up and make those food pantries work and serve the people, the needy people around them, who keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. You're not only the food providers to all those, you're real spirit lifters in your community. And to all of the rest of us who understand what the need is out there and how much you do. When I look at our food pantry operators in Jefferson and Greene County, I am amazed at how hard they work, how much they work, and what good work they do for all of the people who need them in Greene County. I'm grateful and I'm proud of you for this good work you do. And I thank you for really building our communities. I know that's a theme of Michelle's, and it's a theme for what you are all doing, but you are building your communities, and if you do that, you're building the whole state. There's another reason I'm here, of course, and that's because Michelle Book asked me to be here. You surely got to know her 8 years now. You've been CEO and president. I want to tell you, if you don't get it already, Michelle Book is a big deal in Jefferson, Iowa. And that's where I've lived there for 20 years. Except for now, after my remarriage as a septuagenarian to marry Richie here in Des Moines, and she's a big deal in Des Moines. I split time here in Des Moines too, but go back and forth. But I'm in Jefferson nearly every weekday, and often on the weekends. And two stories I want to tell you about Michelle Book to make you understand what a big deal she is. In 2021, she was awarded the community's highest honor. It's the Tower of Fame Award. at that year's Bell Tower Festival. You know about the Bell Tower in Jefferson, the old Carolina Bell Tower. It's just wonderful. So they have the Bell Tower Fame Award, and Michelle was awarded it that summer. The important thing I want to tell you about this, though, came in her remarks when she got that reward. And she talked about how she was a farm kid, came from, it was, her family didn't have a lot, had a lot of love, but they, worked hard workers. The books were known as hard workers all their lives, and she's continued that, of course. But when she was in high school, she was so good and so promising, they turned the bell tower over to her. As she went through high school, she was a docent and guide for tourists coming to the bell tower. And when she was 17 years old, she had her own set of keys to the bell tower in Jefferson, and that is a big deal. She's continued to do that kind of leadership, or offer that kind of leadership at every step she's taken along her career path. And we're benefiting in Iowa by having her as the president and CEO of the Food Bank of Iowa. There's no doubt about it. Besides being a leader, I know this from her roots in Greene County, she's a survivor. So thank you, Michelle. Keep up the good work. We're all with you. And your old hometown is definitely proud of you. The other reason I'm here, or the other thing I want to tell you as I start out here today, is this is my last public speech. I ran into Michelle last night at an event here in Des Moines, and I said, that's one of the things that's going to be unusual about this speech. It's going to be my last speech I do. And she said, well, my gosh, why? And I said, Michelle, I am 76 years old. The people have heard enough of me. I've heard enough of me. It's time for me to hang it up. Now, I say that it is true that I first announced I was giving my last public speech to the Iowa Hospital Association in 1999. So, it's been a rather extended farewell to me. I mean it this time. No kidding. I'm really serious. We'll see how it goes. But, so I was with the Des Moines Register from 1972 when I joined the paper until 98. And God, it was fun. I mean, as I look back on those 26 years, I would say there were probably 5 or 6 days when it seemed like work, and the rest of it was just an absolute lark. Because most of the time I was hanging out in your communities and telling stories about interesting people all over Iowa, and sometimes beyond, that had some connection to Iowa. And it was a great career, it really was. In that time, I think I wrote 5,000 columns for the Register. I was writing 4 a week, and sometimes some extra features. And as Michelle mentioned, I had the column called Iowa Boy. My 7-year-old stepdaughter named it. Even she thought it was silly later. But I stuck with it because, a column name should be something short and crisp, and Offenburger was not. It was one of those clunky German names you do, and once you start saying it, you feel like you're never going to quit saying it. And so I wanted something short and crisp, and Janae came up with Iowa Boy. So I stuck with it. She said, that's just what you are. And I guess that's right. So in that time, if you remember me from that time period, congratulations, you've lived a long, good life. If you don't remember, and I can fill you in, I wrote, among other heavy topics I covered extensively, were the good jokes that Iowa people would tell about people from Minnesota. I wrote about, Michelle mentioned Simon Estes, my coverage of Simon Estes, who became a good friend. I covered him a lot, particularly at the end when apartheid ended in South Africa and Simon finally agreed to go there and perform. I made 2 trips with him and covered him in South Africa. It was an all-time career highlight for me to do that. And then afterwards, when he got back from South Africa the first time, his hometown of Centerville brought him back home, and they renamed the high school auditorium after him, the Simon Estes Auditorium at Centerville High School, which was a thrill. In columns, as Michelle mentioned, I would rank the top 10 cinnamon rolls in Iowa. And I wrote a whole lot about bicycling. John Karras and I were co-hosts together at RAGBRAI for 16 years. And then, so wrote a lot about that. And then it was in 1995 that my late wife, Carla, and I led 308 Iowans across the United States for 5,048 miles. 100-day bike ride from Long Beach to Washington, D.C. to help promote the upcoming Iowa Sesquicentennial celebration of 1996. You may remember that if you were around. So we rode our bikes across the country handing out invitations to come to Iowa the next year. It was again, the things I got paid for. I just look back on that and I think, what were they thinking? But you notice they're not very strong now either. I covered the war too. Michelle mentioned that, the Persian Gulf War of 90 and 91. And you might be interested, I didn't think about this before I went over there. I'd been a reporter for a long time already. But I didn't think about this till I went over there and came home, that the best training I had to go cover a war was that I had covered RAGBRAI. Because RAGBRAI and war, I discovered, are alike in three ways. They're both very big, they're both very confusing, and everybody involved wants to talk. Perfect place for a reporter to be. And yes, I wrote about fashion, as Michelle mentioned. The Ralph Reining, the bus driver, school bus driver, rural mail route carrier and barber in Lorenz, who became my fashion consultant after Ralph Lauren became so well known across the country with his polo brand, you remember? And it was actually one of my editors, Pat D'Amato, who suggested, do you know anybody in Lorenz? And I said, yeah, a few people. And she said, do you know anybody that knows anything about fashion? And I said, in Lorenz? I said, I don't think so. And she said, well, do you know anybody up there named Ralph? And I said, what are you leading to? And she said, well, I just led into this story about Ralph Lauren and his polo clothes, and it seemed pretty cool. And then I thought, we have a town, Lorenz, in Northwest Iowa. I wonder if there's someone there named Ralph that offered to go up there and make a fashion consultant out of it. So I did that, and I had to call Ralph's wife to talk her into this. She was enthused about it. She got the gag, and she thought it was going to be hilarious and fun. So she just told Ralph, you're in. And I got this phone call, because he turned me down 2 or 3 times before, and then I got this phone call one day, and I picked it up to Offenburger, and he says, this would be Ralph of Lorenz. So I would consult with him 2 or 3 times a year, and Ralph was constantly seeing the return of the miniskirt. Imagine that. But we had a lot of fun together, and we wound up judging fashion shows together or doing commentary on fashion shows together. So this state is amazing sometimes. But then I also wrote about jewelry, particularly earrings for men. You know, a lot of the things that I've done in my life has happened as a result of RAGBRAI. And in 1986, I think it was, I started noticing a lot of the cool young guys showing up on RAGBRAI had earrings just like this one, gold stud. And my buddy Jim Green, who was in circulation at the Register, and he eventually became the boss of RAGBRAI, and I were kidding about it that we ought to get earrings. You know, since all these young guys are showing up with earrings, that we ought to get them. And we just kidded about it. And so, After that, RAGBRAI was over. The next week, Greenie had his 55th birthday. Excuse me, his 50th birthday. And so I drew up this gift certificate as a gag, good for the two of us to have our ears pierced by our nurse friend, Barb Allen in Des Moines. She'd do this, and for Greenie's 50th birthday, we both battled and we put Hoover when we were on RAGBRAI next year. Well, it was just a gag and we didn't do it. But next year comes, in '87, we get out there and there's even more cool young guys showing up on RAGBRAI wearing these earrings. And so we're riding along and we start kidding about it again, and then kidding becomes a dare. And I said, okay, Greenie, this is it. It's on. Monday night after RAGBRAI, back to Barb Allen's house, we're going to get our ears pierced and start wearing these gold stud earrings. So that Monday night came after RAGBRAI, and I showed up at Barb's house, and Greenie did it. And I went ahead and had this done, and I really was wearing it ever since then. He's now passed, but I wore it ever since then, just to spite him. And it turns out now, I have figured out I have been wearing it since 1987. I've been wearing this, which is longer time of any male wearing an earring in Iowa except for Chief Blackhawk. But I discovered, I do things and then I learn later what they really mean or what the significance of them is, the impact is. And with an earring, it was this. I forget I have it in. I don't even think about it, especially all these years later. But the only time I really think of it is I get up in the morning and I'm shaving because I see it in the mirror. And I think, it's just so stupid. That it's impossible for me to take myself too seriously the whole rest of the day. And that's been a good way for me to live my life. Now the other fashion item I'm much touchier about, and that's my shoes, my black and white saddle shoes. This goes back to 6th grade in Shenandoah, a long, long time ago, and I've been wearing them ever since, always thinking they're going to come back into style at any moment. I started wearing them because my brother Tom, who was my hero, was going to the University of Iowa, and they actually did come up in style between 52 and 56, and Tom had a pair. Came home wearing them. I got a pair, and I've been wearing them ever since. So, in college, a couple times they did fritter up close. I was going to Vanderbilt, Nashville, Tennessee, and the cheerleaders wore them. Michelle said she wore them as a cheerleader in Jefferson, red and white instead of red and black. But they would fritter up close to being in style, and so, but I just kept wearing them. And in 1994, I wore a pair of saddle shoes I'd been wearing for a long, long time. Were so worn out that my right big toe poked through the upper part of the shoe. And so I thought, what am I going to do? And I was headed to northern Iowa on a story. And so I checked around Des Moines, first of all. Yonkers, Brandeis, Johnson Shoes up by Drake, various other stores. Nobody's carrying in black and white saddle shoes. So I was headed up north to Mason City on a story, and I stopped at that Story City Outlet Mall that I think used to be there. It's not there now, right? And there was a Bass shoe store. Well, I'd always worn Bass shoes. So I walked into this store, and I said to the clerk, want a pair of men's size 10.5 black and white saddle shoes. And he said, well, we don't have them. And I said, I may have ordered these from a catalog. And so if you've got a catalog, we can look up. So he gives me the catalog, and I look up. And there's no black and white saddle shoes, but there is an 800 number for the customer service hotline for the Bass Shoe Company, the GH Bass Shoe Company in South Portland, Maine. So I write that down, go about my business, come back to the office the next day, and think about it. So I call up the customer hotline. I get a woman named Linda Young, customer service hotline. I said, ma'am, I'm Chuck Offenburger in Des Moines, Iowa. I want to order a pair of men's size 10.5 black and white saddle shoes. And she said, well, sir, we don't make those anymore. And I said, you don't? Why not? She said, well, there's no demand. And I said, there is in Iowa. And she said, there is? We haven't noticed. And so I tell her, I go into my story, okay, I know this is gonna cost me an arm and a leg, but I've been wearing these shoes since I've been 6th grade in Shenandoah. I can't find them anywhere now. And so, would you special make me a pair? I know it would cost me an arm and a leg. She says, Mr. Offenburger, is it? And I said, yeah. And she said, this is the G.H. Bass Shoe Company. We are the largest retail shoe company in the world. We don't special make a pair of shoes for anybody. And I said, well, Miss Young, what if I could get my friends to order? Because I got a lot of friends out here that would just love to wear. She said, well, sir, you don't have that many friends. So I get off the phone, I'm disappointed, and I'm pissed. And I've got smoke blowing out my ears, and I've got a column due in about 10 minutes, which is a dangerous combination. I sat down. There are 6 known adult male wearers of black and white saddle shoes in Iowa, and I named them. And I said, I've checked with all of them, including 2 others in our office, Memoria White and Ron Malley, sports writer. I said, I've checked with everybody, and all of our shoes are worn out. We can't get the Bass Shoe Company to make these shoes, so we need your help. We need you to put your money where our mouths will be. So we want you to write letters to the Bass Shoe Company saying that you indeed would like to order a pair of black and white saddle shoes, and that you're willing to pay for them, and if they put them back in production. I said, make those letters as funny as you can. Send them to me at the Register, and I'll send them to the shoe company, and I'll put them together in some columns, and we'll see what happens. So I turn that column in, they run it. The next morning I go in, I cut it out, and I paste it up and faxed it to the Bass Shoe Company in South Carolina. No answer. So from that column though, I had 10 or 15 Register readers write me letters, funny letters, send them along, and so I put those in a second column, put it in paper, faxed it, sent it to South Portland, Maine, no answer. So I put him back in, and one of those letters that came from a school teacher in Atlantic, Iowa, and I wish I knew her and could tell you her name. She said, Dear Chuck, I've got an idea that this is the fall of 1994. She said, I've got an idea for you. Clint Eastwood is over in Winterset this fall making this movie, Bridges of Madison County. And if you could get Clint to put on a pair of those black and white saddle shoes for one scene in that movie, everybody in America would want them. So I thought that is funny. So I put that in a column and stuck it in the newspaper the next day. Faxed it up, sent it off to Bass Shoe Company. 3 days later, Georgia Bricker, the phone operator at the Register, says, you've got a special delivery registered mail letter up here. You better come up and sign for this. So I go right up there and I sign. It's from G. Mitchell Massey, Senior Vice President, Retail, G.H. Bass Shoe Company, South Portland. I opened it up, says, Dear Mr. Offenburger, you don't need to try and get Clint Eastwood to put on a pair of those shoes. We surrender. So he said, here's the deal. We're going to make those shoes for you and all those friends of yours out there in Iowa. So you get their names, addresses, shoe sizes, $65 for men's shoes, $62.50 for women. You package that order up and send it out here, and we'll make those shoes. Mr. Offenburger, you better order 2 pair yourself. This is a one-time thing. So we did that, and we put that up, and on Halloween Day of 1994, we sent that order off to the Bass Shoe Company in South Portland for 648 pairs of black and white saddle shoes and checks totaling $45,000 to the Bass Shoe Company. So we sent that off to South Portland, Maine, and suddenly it's a new deal. The president, Mitchell Massey, the vice president, and Don Sappington, the president of Bass Shoes, get all excited about what they call the Iowa buy. And they say, we're going to do this. And Sappington says, and I'll tell you what, we're going to have those shoes made and delivered in Iowa so those people can wear those to Christmas Eve services. Hubba hubba, get that factory retooled, away we go. So they made the first 10 pair and put them on the shoes of their sales force going to the New York City Shoe Show. The biggest shoe show in the world. And they told the story of the Iowa buy there. and they got orders for 10,000 pairs of black and white saddle shoes. And I wound up on page 1 of the New York Times fashion section. It was the highlight of my journalism career. And all these years later, there's something on the order of about 4,000 people in Iowa who have pairs of black and white saddle shoes stuffed under their couch or in their closet somewhere. And I'm still wearing them, of course. I left the Register in '98 after the bike ride that summer. Truthfully, I could start to see the paper was compressing. I didn't want to be there to watch that. I'd really also done just about everything I wanted to do when I got there. And I thought I was wanting to teach a little bit, so we left and became faculty members at Buena Vista University up in Storm Lake. And also taught at Loras, and I taught at Coe College as a visitor over the years, and a little bit at Upper Iowa too. And over those 26 years, I've written for a whole lot of other people, and gone online now too. For the website, I think it's the oldest news and opinion website in Iowa. It's 24 years old, Offenburger.com, where you can follow me there. But I've mostly continued writing about the same things I've always written about that some of you knew from the Des Moines Register. And now the total column count for a career that's 63 years long now is something up over 10,000 columns. I always intended I was going to organize them better, but most of them are stuffed in envelopes and in plastic tubs. And 2 weeks ago, I am thinking again and being reminded by Mary Ritchie, my dear wife, that we are paying $62.50 a month for a storage unit in Jefferson to take these plastic tubs and envelopes full of columns that I haven't looked at since we moved them in there. And maybe it's time to do something about that. And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, most of them are backed up or in bound archives or now digitally preserved somewhere else. I don't need to do that, and I'd be doing Mary and probably my son, Andrew Offenburger, do him a favor by taking care of this myself, so I threw them. Recycled them, threw the rest away, threw them all away, and it feels good. It feels good not to be paying $62.50, which I think I'll start paying that to the food bank up there. Or the church food pantry that's also in town. I'll split that from them for a while. But honestly, for me, it means a whole lot more to me that I know that a lot of those columns are in scrapbooks put together by mothers and grandmothers of people like you, and that's where those columns are now instead of me paying for them in a storage unit in Jefferson. So I'm glad to have those out there and preserved. Building communities, I want to say this quickly and keep you on your schedule. But Michelle mentioned that in Greene County we have a growth initiative there. I want to make you just briefly acquainted with this because it does deal with the same things you're dealing with. We want to increase our population, and we know we're going to be doing that with some of the fragile people of the nation and the world who we hope will come help us grow in Jefferson and Greene County. In November of 2021, I was eating breakfast at the Kiwanis Club's pancake breakfast. And Sid Jones came up to me. He was at the time was a bank president in Jefferson, great guy, also the president of the Greene County Development Corporation. And he said, hey, did you see that GCDC, the Development Corporation, has got a growth initiative we've launched. We want to grow and diversify the population. And I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, what did you think? I said, well, I'm totally in favor. And he said, I thought you might be. He said, I remember you living in Storm Lake for 5 years, and during the time when Storm Lake became so diverse and grew like mad. And I said, oh yeah, I said, it's really the way to go in rural Iowa. It's going to happen. And he said, well, would you get involved? So I did wind up. Sid and I were co-chairs of this effort, which we started out calling, we knew we were going to focus probably on the Latino population because the fastest growing demographic in America and in Iowa. But we also knew we would be looking for people from all over everywhere to grow the population. And 100 years ago, in 1920, the population of Greene County was pushing 20,000. It was about 19,000 actually. Now, 8,700 in the whole county. Jefferson once had about 7,000 population, and now it's 4,500. And we're ringed by other little towns that are really little, a few hundred people, and really stressed. But we are blessed in Greene County. It's not only one of the richest agricultural counties and the most productive agricultural counties in America, but we have these 6 manufacturing plants that were all locally grown, locally owned and locally grown from their start. 2 of them are now owned by international corporations. They're just booming. I mean, and I think really the reason they've stuck with us over the years is because of those deep roots in founding families. Some of them are now in 2nd generation and pushing 3rd generation. And if you've watched the development of companies over the years, you know that you're in trouble if things aren't going right. That's a time when they're likely to move. And so GCDC found out that those manufacturers at that point in 2021 had 300 open jobs. Stretch that beyond, that included the medical center, which is one of our largest employers, and Wild Rose Casino and Resort, which is also a larger employer. But between our major employers in Greene County, we had 300 open jobs. And so we committed to it and started off to do that. We hired a consultant, Carlos Arguello, who had grown up in Carroll. He's a native of Guatemala, Nicaragua, but he'd grown up in the States, graduated from Carroll High School, UNI, did international business, and we hired him as a consultant to help us approach the Latino population and other populations of newcomers around Iowa and beyond about coming here. We had great success, so, in terms of getting the message out there. And it brought the story of a rural Iowa town seeking immigrants and other newcomers went national. The Washington Post picked up on it. The Journal of Mexico City picked up on it. And we've had inquiries from around the world, but we stalled out because, if all those of you who live in small towns will relate to this, housing. We just simply do not have enough housing. So we went to our local contractors and said, would you please muscle up and start building? We want to order as many houses as you can build. They said, we can't hire anybody. Same thing. And so we were moaning about this at breakfast clubs in Des Moines. One of our local bankers, John Rigler, was telling that story. And a couple of contractors from Des Moines stepped up and said, we're interested in it. And so we've had these contractors that have come in, they've started building. One of them's built 20 units now, and there's got 20 more under construction. Another one is backed off for now while we get a land problem resolved. But that looks like it could be 140 units or something in that range. And we have another that came in from Indianapolis. We wound up being picked as a thriving Iowa town in a new state economic development promotion for workforce tax credits. And so we were picked for that. So we have available workforce tax credits, and that's going to inspire a lot of new housing in itself too. So things are all moving in the right direction. I scare the hell out of everybody because I want 500 families in 5 years. Over the next 5 years, I want to bring in 500 families. That's 2,000 people. And everybody's going, oh my God, we can't do that. How could we do that? And I said, well, start building houses. They said, well, we can't build houses. Why would we build houses? There's not any people here. And I said, they're coming. And they say, well, who's going to build these houses? And I said, listen, I'm mostly a Democrat, but I've been a Republican a few times. And this is the little Republican down here deep inside of me telling you this. I'm telling you, somebody around here is going to get rich building houses. Where are you? And so we got them coming. And it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in Jefferson and Greene County over these next few years. But I tell them, 2,000 people, we won't have any workforce shortages. We'll be adding third shifts. We won't have any problems with our school population. We'll be building new schools in some of those littlest towns. There'll be new houses going up all over Greene County, including in Farland and Adasa and Cooper and Grand Junction and Scranton and all the other towns that we have.
Don't forget Dana.
And Rippy, and Peyton and Sheridan. But at any rate, growth is the answer. Retreat is not the answer to this. Growth is the answer. And you know the other thing that just drives me crazy about this is not a new idea. It's the same thing Greene County did 120 years ago when we opened ourselves to immigrants from all over the world. And look what we have 100 years later. One of the nicest, most productive places on earth to live, where there's plenty of room, it's safe, it's clean, and now we just need more people again. So, but with those, with new population, with people learning how everything works here and getting used to settling in with us, we'll have all kinds of the problems that go with that, and that's where we need an active food bank and food pantries in the state and in Greene County particularly, of course, as we go through this. We have our official first newcomers here. It's a woman named Irina from Ukraine. We opened up also to Ukrainian refugees to start off because it's easy to get them here now. We worked with the community of DeWitt in eastern Iowa, which has had a tremendous program. They've resettled something in the neighborhood of 55 Ukrainian people in DeWitt in the last year. So, and they've helped us get started with it. So we're on the way in Greene County. I stepped down from this in this March. I'm no longer actively heading this up with Sid John, simply because 76 years old, I've spent 2.5 years doing this, hundreds of hours and a couple $1,000s of my own money, which didn't bother me. But it was like, I'm ready for Mary Ritchie and baseball games. So I've turned this over, but I will continue to remind the people where we're headed on this and what we need to do. And I've told them right from the beginning, I said, my jobs on this, there's two things that are my jobs, my responsibility in this. One is making sure we're thinking big enough and acting big enough. Nothing worse in small towns than thinking small. Secondly, remind Greene Countyans of how good they are. These are good people. A whole bunch of families like the books. And they have treated people right and treated people well for 120 years. And as a result, we have a nice place to live with one tremendous bell tower. And so come see us up there. We're a nice place to come to and see what the future looks like. We're going to build it there, and we think that we'll wind up being the talk of the country. Come to think of that, I think I've kind of modeled all this after what Michelle Book and the rest of you are doing with the Food Bank of Iowa and for all of Iowa's people. Let's grow. Amen. Thank you.